Hi everyone. For our data visualization project, we are working with journalists killed since 1992 dataset. This is us. We know that journalists face various dangerous situations, and many of them have been fatal. And we believe that a good visualization can help understand the importance of the issue and help in further analysis for the problem. One of the major attacks on the freedom of press in the recent past was the attack on Charlie Hebdo in Paris, France, 2015, where 4 terrorists broke into the offices of Charlie Hebdo and shot 12 people. Journalists have been going missing for a long time, and the Reporters Without Borders reports 2 journalists who went missing in 2016 with no information about their whereabouts. There are many organizations who are working to protect journalists. The main organizations are Committee to Protect Journalists, the CPJ, which is an American nonprofit founded in 1981, which advocates freedom of press and honors journalists who face attacks, intimidation, and even prison in order to report the world events. Another organization that advocates freedom of press is Reporters Without Borders.
Some of the related work can be found in the CPJ website. Here we can see a bar chart that contains the number of deaths through the years. They also have a map that shows with circles the number of deaths. We thought that we can improve this map because the circles can be distinguished between countries. This data map shows the importance of freedom of speech, which is a big issue in the Middle East. In the case of Mexico, we can find some research. This bar chart shows the homicides of media workers in 3 different data sets. The objective of our work is to visualize the information about the journalists who gave their life for the job through exploratory data analysis, data maps, and network diagrams using interactive visualizations. We want to improve upon previous works for the same problem and discover interesting insights in the data. Our data was obtained from Kaggle. It was posted by the CPJ organization, and it contains 1782 journalist deaths between 1992 and 2016. Some of the interesting features are date of death, coverage, gender, country they were killed, and their organization. Here we have a time series that shows the number of deaths in each month between 1992 and 2016. It has a lot of peaks that are mainly related to some specific event. In this bar chart, we can see the number of deaths through the countries. Iraq is the country that has more number of deaths, followed by Philippines, Syria, and Mexico. In this time series, we show the 5 countries with most deaths. Mexico and Pakistan have an increasing trend, while the other countries have peaks that shows specific events.
Here we have a box plot that shows the distribution of number of death counts per year for each of the 5 countries with most deaths. We see that clearly Iraq has the higher mean with certain high outliers, while Syria has mostly outliers because we only have data for 6 years for Syria. In another bar plot, we can see that we have a number of male and female journalists that were killed in our data set. We clearly have very few female journalists in the data set. This bar plot shows that most journalist deaths were due to confirmed murders. Interesting. This bar plot shows that most journalists worked for specific organizations and were not freelance. Here we see that most journalists were killed in the country they belong to. This bar plot shows that most of these deaths were not investigated, and some of them were only partially investigated. And clearly, we see that some years are worse than the others. For the data maps that we created, which are our main visualization, we needed 3-digit country codes, which are not present in our data set. So we had to use Wikipedia to get the country codes and add them to our data. Here we have a data map that shows the number of deaths for each country for all the years in our data set. We can clearly see that we have Iraq as the country with highest number of deaths, followed by Syria and Philippines. We also have some interesting years. So we can see that when we plot for each year such a map, we can see that in 2009, Philippines has the highest number of deaths. And on further investigation, we found out that this is because of the Philippines massacre of 2009. Similarly, 2012, we can see a high number of deaths in Syria. This is because of the Syrian crisis. Finally, in 1995, Algeria has the highest number of deaths due to the Algerian civil war and the changing political climate in the country. We also have network graphs, and since most of our visualizations are interactive, it will be better to see them on the web page, which is shown here.
We can see that the time series is interactive. You can zoom in order to analyze some specific period. If you go to the data map, you can see the name of the country and the number of deaths. And we have a slider that shows the transitions through the years. For example, if we focus in the case of Iraq and Syria, we can see the transition. It's in this area, Iraq and Syria. And we can observe how it changes through the years, how it starts to decrease, and then Syria, it starts to increase.
We also have network diagrams, which are interactive. So here we have a network which connects journalists in yellow to the topics they were reporting on in purple. We see that clearly. We clearly see that most journalists killed were reporting on war, closely followed by politics and corruption. Next, we have the same visualization, but for different years. And here we can see that how the network changes for different years. The next network graph that we have is connects the journalists in yellow to the media they worked in purple. We can clearly see that most journalists belong to print media, closely followed by television and radio. Finally, the network graph that we have connects journalists to the specific jobs that they had in the media field. So we can clearly see that the highest number of deaths were for print reporters, closely followed by producers and camera operators. We also have certain outliers, clusters which correspond to jobs such as technicians. So the main challenges that we faced in this project was to make the data maps interactive and to make the slider work. First, we tried the slider in Altair and we couldn't get it to work. And finally, we had to move on to jQuery. The work can be expanded by getting information of these deaths from various news sources and Twitter feeds and annotating the data maps. Further analysis can be done on the network diagrams to gain more information about such structures. Finally, we have our references, and thank you.